Well, howdy there. I guess, what's with my camera? Frick it. Guess it's time for a new live stream, y'all. So how's you doing? I am known by many names. Brennan White, Sultan Ali Redbeard, and I'm probably one of the most top 10 well-known people who are right now using social media to kind of archive and document the information about the ethnic Qarsherskiyan community, Qarsherskiyan culture and heritage and history. So, yeah, without any further ado. So, in this video, on this live stream in particular, I'm gonna be talking to y'all about the ethnic Qarsherskiyan community and how the Muslims have influenced the history of our people. And it's an honor to do this video. As a Qarsherskiyan and a Muslim also, I'd say that us Qarsherskiyan Muslims are overrepresented probably. There are actually more Christians than Muslims in our community. Believe it or not, Christianity is the largest religious belief adhered to in the Qarsherskiyan community. Islam is second. It's just, Muslims in America, I guess us existing is kind of controversial for some, hated, or whatever they call it. Overrepresented in the media, Spread Islam, and new tribes and families converted to Islam from Hindu and Christianity and other faiths. The main ones that you want to focus on are the Hausa, the Fulani, and the Mandinka. And while those are the three main ethnic groups that were Muslim majority in West Africa, that had many people brought to the USA and North America and the Caribbean, they aren't the only groups. And Yoruba are two of the most common sources of African ancestry in our community. So, the black Muslims from West Africa, when they were brought here on the transatlantic slave trade, the vast majority of them were converted to Christianity under great pressure. Some of them secretly were still Muslim by heart, but outwardly to the slave masters, they was Christians. And there are loads of historical records on this. There are some people who hate that I'm saying this right now, who really want to bury and hide this history and say, stop trying to justify Islam existing in the USA. And I don't need to justify my faith existing in the USA. The USA has freedom of religion. It's the Christians who came here and, you know what happened to the Native Americans. But Muslims were brought here against their will as enslaved people. Try and justify that. Now, these black people from Africa, many of them followed Vodun or Islam or different forms of beliefs that are often lumped together under a vague umbrella term of animism. And some of them were Christians. Like some of the first black folks brought to the USA from Angola. Angola was Portuguese colony and is predominantly Catholic. So there were many Christians already among them too. Many different faiths. Then of course our European ancestors brought all their flavors of Christianity to the table. Catholicism, Lutheranism, Amish, Mennonite, Baptist, lots of Baptists. And that happened. And then don't forget the native ancestors. Before they were converted to Christianity, they had their beliefs and spirituality, which is widely diverse and varies widely from one nation to another in terms of what the different indigenous nations had as state religions of their countries before their land was stolen from them and genocide reduced their population by over 95%. Now, something y'all should know is that for most of the history of the Qarsherskiyan people, after we formed as a mix of people of different nations as a mixed nation, a mixed race community, a mixed tribe of kinds of many different people. Really, it was many different little groups, not one crystallized unified identity. Our communities existed as distinct communities. Even after the term Qarsherskiyan was coined in 1991 and kind of popularized on the internet in late 2019, and now we're here where we are today, we still recognize there's distinct subgroups. In each family, their traditions can vary, and by region and different subgroups, can be some huge variances in terms of the culture and stuff and the history of belief. So, every individual has the right to believe whatever they want. Today, there's even atheists in New World spirituality, but Islam was nearly stamped out. Now, I might be biased to say this, what I'm about to tell you, because I'm a Muslim, but I personally believe that Islam is the truth as a Muslim, right? Obviously, if I'm a Muslim, I believe in the concept of Tawheed and in the prophecy of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I might be biased to tell y'all, but I believe it was destined to never fully be stamped out. Many people teach you that it was stamped out, but honestly, that's not really the nuanced reality of history. Although the faith itself, anyone practicing Islam, we don't have records for it. By like the 1900s, they'd all been converted to atheism or Christianity or Judaism or some other faith. There was probably, I believe, many of us believe, there were people who were secretly Muslims or crypto-Muslim who were hiding their faith. Taqiyya, if you know, you know. To prevent discrimination and all that. And then, after the civil rights movement, it became safe. So they became openly Muslim again. And Islam grew again. But the cultural influence from the Muslim ancestors is big. Not just on the Qarsherskiyan community, but on the Black American community as a whole. Oh yeah. So, by the 1950s and 60s, many Muslim communities were organizing. And with the memories and traditions that were passed down from the ancestors over generations, people began to try to think about how they could bring back the faith and restore it to the people. There wasn't wide access to Quran or religious literature in the USA way back then. So we saw some various different interpretations of what was Islam when it made a resurgence among the Qarsherskiyan community. Science temple popped up in the Black American community, and Qarsherskiyan folks were not immune to this trend. And also, there's a big, huge theory out there that the founder of the Nation of Islam was probably Qarsherskiyan. That's a big, huge conspiracy theory. It's all hearsay. There's no way to really prove or disprove it, but it's pretty likely if you look at photos of what he looked like. He was pretty pale for a black dude. He looked mixed. He looked kind of like me. But, well, another thing you should know, Malcolm X's dad many argue that he was Qarsherskiyan. His time was before the term was coined. So, he never really identified with the Qarsherskiyan community, but many people believe that his dad and him were descendants of our community, which means any descendant of Malcolm X alive today has the right to claim the term Qarsherskiyan to describe their mixed heritage. But his dad is believed to be Qarsherskiyan. His mom was of Afro-Caribbean origin, biracial. And so, Malcolm X actually carried the red hair gene, which is pretty common in Afro-Caribbean and in Qarsherskiyan communities. The Afro-gingers or black redheads, usually in the Americas, they occur in Afro-Caribbean people and in Qarsherskiyan people because of the mixing of Celtic ancestry with African ancestry. And Celtic people like the Scots, the Irish and the Welsh and the Cornish have high amounts of the high rates of having the gene that causes red hair. It's a mutation on the MC1R. So, it's pretty common in our community. Many Qarsherskiyan folks look way darker than me, and they just look like a typical black American, but they might have like blonde or red highlights in their hair. They'll got dreadlocks or naturally blonde or red, and everyone will pick on them because they think it's fake, and it's not. But, so yeah, by like the 1950s and 60s, that was when Islam first started making a comeback among the ancestors of the modern Qarsherskiyan community as it is today. And it was really growing among the black American community in general, rapidly. But after 1991, when the Qarsherskiyan community was trying to prevent our community from being assimilated and erased from history, and when the term Qarsherskiyan was first came up with to identify ourselves by, ever since then, the Muslims who were a minority among the Qarsherskiyan community, many people had been inspired by the Nation of Islam, but ended up becoming Sunni or Shia Muslim, or ended up on a more orthodox path, kind of like Malcolm X did in the end. And yeah, so it just so happened that the Qarsherskiyan Muslims had a really distinct identity, not just as multi-generationally mixed race folks in America, but Muslims too. So they really stood out from the average American. Some people thought they were weird. They had a lot of stigma and hate they faced. Even before 9/11, people just weren't familiar with Islam. There were people who didn't even know that we believe in Jesus, peace be upon him. There were people who didn't even know about our concept of Tawheed, who thought we were somehow like a pagan group or polytheist. A'udhu billah. They didn't understand Islam, and there was a lot of hate for us because Muslims aren't considered Christians. And because of things like that, the Qarsherskiyan Muslims really were taking the lead in all the early movements to kind of identify our community and distinguish our community and preserve our unique blended culture as the people who don't fit neatly into racial categories and boxes. One kid gets classified as black and another gets classified as white, but they're both biological brothers and sisters, and both of them share the same parents, but it's just because how they look. In reality, both of them are actually mixed race. One of them wants to say they're black and won't admit they're part white. One of them wants to say they're black and won't admit they're part, one of them wants to say they're white and won't admit they're part black. And so, with all the colorism and the racism that tried to tear apart our community, that's why we identify as Qarsherskiyan. We acknowledge each other, and we know we're one people no matter what someone looks like, whether someone's darker or if they're light-skinned like me. We all know who we are. So, because of this, our community has been saved. Although we get a lot of criticism. A lot of people don't understand our community and they really hate us and what we're doing for ourselves. They hate to see us being so successful and supporting one another and not hating one another and being divided. And they hate all this success we got and all the happiness we have. They seek to disturb our peace and divide our community and create rumbles. But every time they fail, we're getting really good at noticing when these people are trying to do it and calling them out for it when outsiders mess around with us and try to stir up drama. So the Muslims, they are not really a new phenomenon. We had distant ancestors from Africa who were Muslim, but a lot of it was stomped out by the colonial society and the post-colonial America. And so, as part of like the modern era, when freedom of religion is a lot more safeguarded and better off than it has been at some other times, there's a bit more tolerance and understanding about different faiths. It's still dangerous, there's still hateful people out there, but generally speaking, it's a better time to be a Muslim in the USA lately. So many people, as part of like decolonization, ended up converting back to Islam, just like our West African ancestors believed in. like the Sokoto Caliphate, northern Nigeria. The Sokoto Caliphate in Usman Dan Fodio. And you know what? Nigeria, the Yoruba people I mentioned earlier, that's one of the common sources of DNA in the Qarsherskiyan community is Nigeria and the Yoruba people, which they're not a Muslim majority ethnic group, but they had Muslims among them. And also that's the source of Ifa, or Isa Se, the Orishas. You probably know, minority of Qarsherskiyan people, maybe like 5% believe in the Orishas and worship them. That comes from the Yoruba people. And the Fulani, they're the ones who waged the Fulani Jihad, which is being misrepresented and turned into a political thing in modern days by extremists, unfortunately, who are trying to, abuse history and historical events to justify harassing contemporary modern Muslim communities. Even if we're not radical or harming anyone or at war, and we're getting along with our Christian neighbors, there's people trying to stir the pot, trying to stir the gumbo pot and separate it. All the shrimp goes here, all the onions go there. We ain't having that. We as Qarsherskiyan and proud. But the Fulani Jihads, you know about it, unfortunately, it's happening. And we can't undo history. It has bright chapters and dark chapters. But yes, so the Fulani were a Muslim majority ethnic group, and they're a common source of our black ancestry too. So our West African ancestors were Muslim if you descended from the Tidewater, the Central Northern Appalachian, or the Midwest and Great Lakes area Qarsherskiyans. This will include those of the Carolina Sandhills and those of the Deep South and Southeast. This includes those in Ohio, like the Darke County group and Madison County and Pickaway County group, which my folks descended from. Probably one of the most well-known distinctly Qarsherskiyan subgroups. A really good example that's been used a lot to describe Qarsherskiyan identity and the crystallization and development of our identity. But one thing y'all should know also is that while it is not a new phenomenon among our people since our ancestors were Muslim long ago, it almost got entirely stamped out. It didn't fully. There were cultural remnants, but the faith, there could have still been Muslims. We don't know. We're always finding out new things. But they would have been really low-key about it and hiding their beliefs. It wasn't until more of modern contemporary times that there's like people openly identifying as Muslim who are like, undeniably, yeah, they're Muslim. That's what they believe, and they're not even afraid to show you it. They're proud of it. And that's people like me. And we kind of got pushed and alienated out from the rest of the American society even more, because not only was our culture and our appearance different, but also our faith was different from most folks here. So that is the reason why Muslims are overrepresented in the Qarsherskiyan community. When you're running into Qarsherskiyan people on social media or learning about us on the internet, you run into a lot of Muslims. But polls have shown that we are the second largest religious group in the Qarsherskiyan community, the Muslim. We make up 29.9%, which is nearly 30%, which is almost 1/3 of the Qarsherskiyan population. The Christians, on the other hand, they do make up more. I forget how much it was. Maybe it was like 39%. Maybe it was a bit less than that. But they make up a bit more than 1/3, or around 1/3. But they make up more of the population than the Muslims make up in the Qarsherskiyan community. So there are actually more Qarsherskiyan Christians than Qarsherskiyan Muslims. It's just the Christians in the Qarsherskiyan community. There's not as much of them on social media all the time, documenting the heritage and family trees and information on these things. So people aren't running into them as much online. But if you visit Qarsherskiyan communities in person, you visit different families and stuff and travel around the Mezaravan trying to meet some of us, you run into more Christians than Muslims. And actually there's a lot of them who, they're not familiar with Islam at all. They don't really know much about Islamic theology or about the Muslims' concept of Tawheed, the oneness of God Almighty. Many don't even know about these things. They don't know about Tawheed or about Shahada or who Muhammad was. There's people who are so confused, they don't know what Muslims believe. They think we worship Muhammad. A'udhu billah, and of course we don't. But there's people who think we do. From the Qarsherskiyan community, Christians. Because they're not Muslims, they're Christians. They don't know about Islam. They don't know what Muslims believe except what their pastors tell them. And the pastors usually misrepresent us and try to be like, look at that, they're of a religion and that's bad. They're evil. So these people can be actually no offense to them, but some of them can be kind of ignorant about Islam. So, yeah, Muslims, Qarsherskiyan Muslims have done a lot of contributions to the internet in terms of available information about our community, representing and speaking up. But Qarsherskiyan Christians, in the last couple weeks, a lot of them have been complaining, saying, we don't feel represented enough. Why aren't we represented? There's more of us than Muslims in the community. And that's a valid point, but I mean, there's just not many of them doing what the Qarsherskiyan Muslims have often been doing. There's not many Qarsherskiyan Christians making videos about their family trees and recipes and stuff like that. A lot of them, for whatever reason, they're just kind of hiding their heritage and stuff and not talking about it as much on average. So you're just not running into them as much. And, it's something people in our community are discussing. We've been actually very civil about it. No one's arguing, no one's name-calling, no one's being mean. We're trying to find solutions to help the Christians, and they are going to get more representation pretty soon, God willing. But, so, if you meet them, there's many of them who grew up eating pork and stuff. They'll have pig's feet, pickled pig's feet. They'll have ham hocks in their greens. They have chitlins, the pig intestines. These were all things that back in the day Qarsherskiyan folks used to eat. It was part of the cuisine. Qarsherskiyan Christians mainly, of course. So these are all aspects of our culture, like a Qarsherskiyan cuisine containing pork. The Jews and us Muslims like me don't eat the pork. We don't eat pork. So all the recipes containing pork, we've shown halal versions of it, like turkey bacon breakfast. Or you just don't see it as much. So a lot of Qarsherskiyan cuisine that the Christians in our community eat that contains pork, it has little to no information available online about it, at least as of now when I'm making this live stream. And we're working to change that. It's only been a few years since 2019 when we started using the internet to archive our culture and document things and reach out and find one another and connect with one another from all across the country and compare the different subgroups, because it's a bunch of different mixed race families and communities that kind of had a similar heritage, but it's not always all the same. Each different group can, in different areas, have their own traditions and all. And we're all still Qarsherskiyan. No one's going to take that away from us or divide us. But we acknowledge that there's lots of differences too, as much as there are similarities. And that's actually a really cool thing. It's not a bad thing. Some people feel the need to try to create some kind of a pan-Qarsherskiyan identity, where all the different cultures of the subgroups are blended. People in Newfoundland started considering the Carolina parakeet to be sacred. And how would people in Newfoundland back in the day know Carolina parakeets existed? And then, people down in, freaking Central Florida, Lake and Sumter and Marion County and stuff, started talking about, the great auk. Well, since the great auk is extinct, we need to make a new recipe using the wild Florida turkey to replace it. And it's like, well, your ancestors never ate the great auk or hunted for them when they were still alive so long ago, before that species went extinct. We didn't have ancestors that lived up there. So people, they find ways to make interesting connections. There's kind of a pan-Qarsherskiyan identity arising, and there's no harm in that, as long as people are respecting the cultures of different subgroups they don't belong to. Because what's one of the main things they tell us when it comes to studying cultures and traditions. Don't claim any community that doesn't claim you. We as Qarsherskiyan. If you're a Qarsherskiyan person who's enrolled in a Native American tribe, that tribe claims you, and then you as a Native American, and you belong to that nation, and it's a sovereign nation. But if you don't belong to a Native American tribe, you don't know where the indigenous DNA results on your test come from, you're of indigenous American descent, but you're not a Native American, at least not politically, not racially or genetically, but you are of Native American or indigenous descent. And you can decolonize your mind if you haven't already, or if that's not really a problem if you were raised without a colonized type of mindset. And you can do ancestral research and try and do genealogy and figure out what tribe your ancestor belonged to. And you can reach out to that tribe and see any respectful ways you can reconnect or help out or get involved in a community. They might allow you to really reconnect and learn the language and enroll and become part of the tribe. Even if you have low blood quantum, that might not be a problem. Depends on the tribe. And each one is different. They're all sovereign nations, and they have the right to determine citizenship and who belongs. But if you are not claimed by a community, then you should not claim that community that doesn't claim you. And you'll hear that a lot. You'll hear that a lot from us Qarsherskiyan folks. And so, yeah, that was a talk about the Muslims and the ethnic Qarsherskiyan community. And the theology and belief in God Almighty is a pretty interesting thing for y'all to know about. I'll tell you, the main thing, usually the vast majority of Muslims believe that God is one God only, the God that Abraham and Moses worship, often called Allah, an Arabic word that just means the God, which is used by Muslims and Arabic-speaking Christians. And it just means the God. It's the same God that Christians and Jews worship, the God of Abraham and Moses. You know, the one that Abraham and Moses prayed to. In the Bible, it's the same God, believe it or not. I'm not talking about one of those crazy cliches where people are falsely claiming all religions are the same and believe in the same God. Like, obviously Hindus just don't believe in the same God as Muslims believe in. They arguably believe in many gods, but many in one. But that goes against the Islamic concept of Tawheed, that God is one and can't be divided into parts. That's why like 99.9999% of Muslims don't believe in the Trinity. We believe in Jesus Christ, and we believe in God, in the God that the Christians believe. But we don't believe about God that He is part of His Trinity, with Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We believe in God Almighty, what the Christians call God the Father. We believe in Jesus, but we don't claim that He is God, or God on earth, or God as a man, or God in a human body, or in the flesh. We do claim that He is the Word of God, Kalmatullah. If you are a Sufi or Shia Muslim, like me especially, many of the Salafis, as they call themselves, the Salafi Sunni Muslims in the Qarsherski community often don't say that. But we don't really worship anything other than God. So as Muslims, we don't worship Jesus Christ. We love Him. We believe He was a messenger of God. But we see Him as a prophet just like all the other prophets in the Bible. Just like Moses, Abraham, Daniel, Ezekiel, Elijah. You know, all the prophets who are mentioned in the Bible. We believe that Jesus was just like them. He was just one of these prophets who came to humanity as a mercy unto mankind to deliver the message of God. We don't really have this belief that He is part of God or one with God or is God like the Christians believe. That's one of the main differences between Christianity and Islam, and why Christian and Muslims don't believe in the same faith. It's because Muslims have that concept of Tawheed, where we say there's only one God, nothing can compare to Him at all, nothing at all. He's not a human being. We call God He, because in Arabic, the male pronoun he is for God because God isn't a girl. So the way Arabic works, anything that's not a girl has masculine pronouns unless it's something that is considered culturally feminine in some way, right? So God is called he, but we don't believe God is a man or is male. We don't believe God has a gender. This might surprise a lot of people, but we don't believe God is like his creation. We don't believe that he has like a hairy arms and blue eyes. We don't think God looks like a human being. So this is one reason why Muslim and Christians debate a lot, and they get into arguments about the nature of God, and it causes all sorts of controversy. That's why people can't just agree to disagree, sadly, and just learn to get along, unless they're Qarsherskiyan. I have many relatives who are Christian. They never done nothing bad to me to hurt me or anything. And they know I'm Muslim. They don't know what that means. They don't really understand what I believe at all. They think that I don't believe in the same God as them, no matter how many times I try to explain to them or tell them. And I have to keep telling them that I believe in Jesus, and they keep getting shocked. Like every single day, they're like, wait, what? You believe in Jesus? I thought you were a Muslim. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I believe in Jesus. Muslims believe in Jesus. He's the most quoted prophet in the Quran. Like, he's quoted more than Muhammad is in our own book, the Quran. Like, of course I believe in Jesus. If I didn't believe in Jesus, that would make me a non-Muslim. You can't be a Muslim and not believe in Jesus. And they're like, are you part of some cult or something? I never heard of that. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, all Muslims believe in Jesus. And they just don't get it. They don't understand. I don't know why they don't understand. I don't know how they don't get it. They think this is like some fringe belief. They're like, oh, you're not like most Muslims, I guess. I'm like, I am. Like, Muslims believe in Jesus. This is completely normal. This is what mainstream and even like fringe groups all agree on. The Ahmadis believe in Jesus. The Ibadis believe in Jesus. Shiites, like all the Shia groups, we believe in Jesus. The Sunnis believe in Jesus. The Quranists believe in Jesus. Like the main text of the Quran that all Muslims believe in, that you have to believe in to be a Muslim, it tells you to believe in Jesus. And Jesus is like the most quoted prophet in the whole Quran. You can't be a Muslim and not believe in Jesus. I've never heard of any kind of even small fringe group or sect or Islamic-like cult of any kind even that rejects the existence of Jesus. Jesus is literally inseparable from the Islamic religion and theology. We believe he was born to Mary, peace be upon her. We call her Maryam in Arabic. And we believe she was a virgin when she gave birth to him. We believe he was the promised Messiah. We believe he was a messenger of God, sent onto mankind as a mercy to the world from God. We just don't worship him. We don't ask him for help. We don't think he is God. That's what makes us different from Christians. And no one understands that. They think that we're some like pagan belief that has like 1,000 gods and stuff. And I don't know why people think that, because that goes completely against Islamic teachings. I had someone say, so do you worship a black rock? I was like, what are you talking about? BlackRock is like this evil company. They're freaking, they're part of the military-industrial complex. And they're like, no, the Black Rock in Mecca. I'm like, are you talking about the black stone at the Kaaba? Like, it was a stone, like a meteorite probably, or somehow it was either fell as a meteor, or fell from the sky, or was brought down from up. God did that as so people would see it as a sign. It was a sign from God. And it's there at the Kaaba. And that's the direction where Muslims pray towards the Kaaba. But Muslims don't worship the Kaaba or the black stone. Muslims don't pray to it or ask it for help or seek protection from it or anything. Muslims don't talk to the black stone. Muslims don't think it has some magical powers. Muslims believe in God. There are some fringe groups that believe that the black stone turned black from taking away people's sins when people kissed the stone, that it absorbed their sins. But this is like a fringe thing, and it goes against traditional Islamic beliefs and what's orthodox. Most Muslims wouldn't believe that. But of course, there's difference in different denominations, just like with Christianity or Judaism. You know, when people tell me that all the Jews in the world are secretly part of some conspiracy to control us all, I tell them, are you crazy? Have you met the Jews? They can't agree on anything. It's true. All my Jewish friends watching this will know. They'll be like, yeah, but we don't agree on anything. There's other groups of Jews that one group of Jews doesn't get along with this other one. It's just like with Christians or with Muslims. It's all the same. There's all different kinds of sectarianism and denominations that have plagued all of these faiths. But, so the vast majority of Muslims, many Muslims believe you could try to touch it or get close to it, not like for good luck or anything. I actually don't understand why many of them do this. What they taught me in my beliefs as a Shia Muslim who studied from Ismailis and Zaydis mainly is the black stone. We aren't trying to kiss it or anything. I know there's a lot of Muslims who do try to touch it or get close to it. I don't know what's with this. Me personally, I don't believe this is something that arose in early Islam. I think this was an innovation in the faith. But that's just my belief, and there are some Muslims who, they could probably explain what they believe and why they're doing that. But no Muslims worship the black stone or ask it for help or seek some kind of guidance from it. It's not like a crystal ball. The vast majority of Muslims, we just believe it's just a sign that God sent to us. And for some reason, it's there at the Kaaba. It's just there, at a museum display, so we can see it. It's a reminder to us. You can read about it online. If you want to study Catholicism, you learn from a Catholic. If you want to study Protestantism, you learn from a Protestant. If you want to study Judaism, you go to a website made by the Jews to hear about what they believe. So if you want to study what Muslims believe, you should go to Islamic websites and just read about what people represent our faith. If you want to learn about Islam, you shouldn't go to a Baptist pastor from southern Alabama who has never met a Muslim in his life, because chances are he doesn't know what Muslims believe. He's going to say some things that aren't nuanced enough or aren't accurate or misrepresenting us, possibly even just downright wrong and not true at all. Anyone who's from the USA who's a Muslim, who's been one at least as long as I have, some years now, half a decade, they'll be able to tell you about how our faith is misrepresented all the time and about this stuff. Now, I became a Muslim back in 2020 or 2021. It was a gradual process, so I don't know exactly when I converted to the faith. But I had been exposed to it long before then. As a little kid, some of my cousins were Muslims. But it wasn't until October 2023 that I really settled on Shia Islam, and specifically studying the Zaydiyya and Ismailiyya, go into research about the Nazaris, the Bohras, the Zaydi jurisprudence and beliefs, and this whole, people talked about Jurudi versus, classical Hadawi school, and all these different schools of thought within Zaydiyya. I studied Sufism and Tawassuf, and I used my aql, my mind God gave me, my intellect, to come to logical conclusions and find out what I actually believe for myself. I don't just blindly follow whatever someone tells me and believe it because someone says it to me. I do research, and I use the common sense that God gave me to do things like doing research and coming to conclusions about what I think myself. So, I would say in the Qarsherskiyan community, the vast majority of Muslims are Shia. A lot are Zaydi like me, and we had been exposed to these beliefs by the da'wah, which is kind of like imagine the Mormon missionaries going door to door, but instead it's Muslims, and instead of coming to your door, they're finding you online and befriending you and chatting with you. And if you're open to discussing with them, they'll teach you what they know. and try to show you and guide you to the truth, and you have to use your own logic in your mind to figure it out and see if you believe all that they're saying or not. Do investigation for yourself. And this kind of caused a lot of us to become Shia Muslims, like Zaydis, Ismailis, Twelvers. There's even some people who they really went down the rabbit hole trying to figure out what they believed themselves to be true about Islamic beliefs, what they would subscribe to. And in going down deep rabbit holes, there's some groups of people, they're really small fringe groups that try to revive extinct sects of Shia Islam that have been gone for a long time now. As far as we know, they could have always existed all this time in secret, and that's what they'll tell you, but officially, as far as we know, it's just revivalist movements. There's been revivalist movements of several Shia groups, including the Qaysanites, which were from some of the very earliest Shia groups, from the Alid revolts, the pro-Alids, during the times of the great fitnas in the Muslim Ummah, way back in early Muslim history in the 700s and 800s. And also, there were some neo-Manichaeans. Manichaeans aren't Muslim, but there's some people trying to revive Manichaeism. That's a whole other discussion. But I talk to a lot of people, and I study and research all the things they're telling me about, and try to fact check and verify things. And that's how I learned a whole lot. Become like a human encyclopedia, as people are telling me. And then I information dump all this stuff onto social media for all of you guys. So, and that's how you get this information from me. And I hope I have educated you enough while yapping for 45 minutes straight on the YouTube live stream. And I think that it was a good live stream. I think that we did quite a good job, doing pretty well. Did I miss anything to cover? Y'all should research the Sokoto Caliphate in West Africa during like the 1800s or 1700s era. It's pretty interesting. There's a lot of the Muslims in the Qarsherskiyan community believe that they descended from some of the later people to be brought over on the transatlantic slave trade from Africa, who may have maintained beliefs from the Muslims that existed before the Sokoto Caliphate. The Sokoto Caliphate came and kind of pushed a more orthodox, more strict kind of Puritan version of Sunni Islam in West Africa. And before the existence of the Sokoto Caliphate in West Africa, many of the black Muslims that lived in that part of the world, they were more into like a tawassuf or Sufism, and they were more into mysticism. And there was more diversity in the different beliefs that were in different towns and communities in terms of faith and madhab. There are some conspiracy theories, I don't give much credit myself, that believe that North African Muslims from the Ismailis, like Ismailis, just like the Bohras and the Nizaris, the Suleimani and others, there are some conspiracy theorists who believe that Ismaili missionaries secretly converted people in West Africa to Ismaili Shias, and they were just pretending to be Sunnis to blend in, like Taqiyya. And then, when they were brought over on the transatlantic slave trade, they were used to hiding their faith, so it wasn't too hard for them to do that. And then they just pretended to be Southern Baptists who went to black churches and stuff. And I don't give this theory much credence, but if you look at something a lot of Muslims from the Qarsherskiyan community will tell you about, is that the first black church in the USA, I believe it was either in Savannah, Georgia or Charleston, South Carolina. The accounts I'm reading on these Qarsherskiyan websites seem to differ. But the first black church in the USA, in the pews, you know, the wooden benches or seats people in the churches sit on, someone carved a surah from the Quran for protection from the enslavers and the oppressors, from the elite plantation owning class, you know, like the 5% at the top of the colonial society. They wrote surah verses from a surah, a book of the Quran. They carved it into the pews in the first black church. And I think it hasn't been removed. It's still there today. Or maybe they did remove it, but there's photos of it online somewhere. And I know several people, especially the Muslims from the Qarsherskiyan community, who really want this photo. So if any of y'all know what I'm talking about or know where to find this photo, please send it to either me or Alia or Monique or someone else in the community, because this is something that's really wanted, that we're hoping to pass around as we're always disseminating information for the community. Me and several other high-profile social media influencers repping the community really want to get a hold of this. But it's also not just for, like, you know, political reasons in terms of our religious beliefs. It's not even trying to help prove or establish that. We don't really care if anyone believes what we're saying or not, and if they all think that it's a new modern convert phenomenon. But it's mainly the Ajami script, type of writing system from Western Africa, which looks like Arabic. It's basically an Arabic-based script that's been adapted for indigenous Africa. Look at this. There's a little dog. A little dog appeared from nowhere and started barking at me. That's crazy. For a second you had me scared, but it's a tiny little dog. Should I pet it? Hey, you.